fighting in the streets as brave Ukrainians repel the Russian advance. The Russian invaders are meeting fierce resistance across Ukraine, their burned-out vehicles abandoned by the roadside. Video from a military drone shows a direct hit on an armored Russian column. Ukraine's second-largest city shot this video diary after fighting there.
And this is the place where Ukrainian military destroyed a column of Russian light vehicles.
This video shows tanks halted by an unarmed human tide. Kira Rudik, a member of the Ukrainian parliament, tells Inside Edition she has taken up arms.
Before 5 days ago, I have never held a gun in my life. And right now I'm training to use Kalashnikov to be able to protect whom I love.
Russian saboteurs are said to be painting signs on the roofs of high-rises, marking them as targets for an aerial attack. Ukrainians are being asked to cover them up, but some can be seen only with a UV light. There are signs that the Russian reverses are causing Putin's mental state to deteriorate. Hundreds of thousands of women and children are fleeing to Poland, triggering a humanitarian crisis.
Determination to keep going.
Ruthless attack on Ukraine's second-largest city. Russia accused of using cluster munitions on a residential area of Kharkiv, home to 1.5 million people, 6 hours east of Kiev, the latest onslaught of the Russian invasion. Buildings set alight, homes obliterated, missiles pepper the city, sticking out of the dirt near a playground and lodged in the kitchen in the centre of an apartment complex. Russia has denied targeting civilians, but this footage suggests otherwise. The death toll is rising and hundreds of people are wounded. The bombardment, condemned by Ukraine's president as a war crime. Kharkiv's mayor saying this is a massacre of us, the Ukrainian people. In Chernihiv, fresh shelling in the city centre ignited a supermarket.
Most of these civilians were killed by explosive weapons with a wide impact area.
While to the south, civilians who couldn't fight back with bullets turned their voices on the enemy. Russian forces who were occupying a city council building told to go home. The chants echoing a message from Ukraine's president: drop your weapons and go. On the border with Belarus, Ukrainian officials attempted diplomacy, discussing a ceasefire with their Russian counterparts. But after 5 hours of talks, nothing was decided, just an agreement to meet again, while the White House has chosen to de-escalate after Putin readied his nuclear forces.
Mr. President, should Americans be worried about nuclear war?
No. This time we see no reason to change our own alert levels.
In Ukraine's capital, many aren't reassured or willing to wait for peace.
Hundreds of thousands are trying to get out while they can.
These scenes captured just hours after the weekend curfew lifted. As residents emerged from bunkers and basements, trains suddenly started moving again. For many, that was the sign to flee.
Feeling terrible.
Hundreds making the most of a brief lull in explosions and air raid sirens as the peace talks got underway. Among them, Amaymi Sidki, who spent last night in our bomb shelter.
How are you feeling right now?
I'm just panicking.
I hope we get there safe. Thank you.
Across the city centre, there have been long queues outside grocery stores. Many ran short of supplies during the curfew. They're determined not to be caught out again.
Currently, I'm afraid that this shop will be closed. And we won't get enough food, yes.
At Kiev airport, Ukrainian troops arrested a group of what they say were Russian saboteurs after reports 400 mercenaries had been deployed to assassinate President Zelensky. The Russian advance slowed by a determined resistance. The military is inching closer to Kiev. Satellite images show a Russian convoy that appears to stretch 64 kilometres, approaching the outskirts of the city. And as night falls and sirens sound, it's impossible to ignore the threat at the doorstep. In Kiev, Ukraine, Karianne Greenbank, 9 News.
Way to war. At this military gear shop in Lviv, everything is now free.
Where will you be fighting?
Do you know?
We don't know.
26-year-old Roman says he's ready to face Putin's army.
How are you feeling about it now?
Good.
Nearby, men queue for permits to carry guns.
I just want to carry a weapon and join the local patrols here to protect our streets, and in case the Russian troops will come here.
Anton is 30, one of many students, fathers, sons, creating a local resistance, an armed neighbourhood watch to intercept Russian reconnaissance teams and fight back should Putin's troops head west. At a checkpoint outside Lviv, we meet Nazar, a surgeon with no military experience. He was one of the first to sign up to protect his region.
Are you scared of Putin's army?
I was at first, he says, but the shock of war has turned to defiance. The locals built these barricades themselves, and behind them, away from the camera, Nazar showed us handmade Molotov cocktails.
And from
Each of us is a warrior, Volodymyr Zelensky says. I'm confident each of us will win. In towns across the country, reservists are getting a crash course in combat training, heading into battle as so many seek safety. In an old theatre converted into a shelter, Alessandra and her son Pasha arrive from Kharkiv. She describes the tanks, missiles and explosions hiding underground until she could safely flee with her boy. He's 11.
I think he's very brave. Does he feel brave?
I was a little bit scared, sometimes, he replies. They've travelled more than 1,000 kilometres and still have a long, difficult journey onto Poland to start a new life. In Lviv, Ukraine, Amelia Adams, 9 News.
Starting to bite, President Putin, at an emergency meeting of his economic advisers, snapped at the West, calling it an empire of lies. Russia's central bank more than doubled interest rates to 20% as the ruble collapsed to its lowest level ever. The stock exchange was forced to stay closed. Apple Pay and Google Pay no longer working on the metro system. Life now much more difficult for ordinary Russians. Our economic situation will get a lot worse, this woman says, but it's still not comparable with the losses of those who are dying through the fault of our forces. In a fresh round of economic punishment, the Biden administration has now placed sanctions on Russia's central bank, as well as freezing its American assets.
We will do more, assuming the Russian Federation continues to escalate.
Britain also tightened the screws.
We will bring in a full asset freeze on all Russian banks in days.
As well, Russian-registered ships will be turned away from British ports. And Russia's sporting isolation now extends to the World's Game. Football's governing bodies announcing the suspension of Russia's teams worldwide. FIFA and UEFA saying football is fully united and in full solidarity with all the people affected in Ukraine. A rare sound in the United Nations General Assembly: silence. Ahead of a very rare emergency special session, the first in its history to discuss a European war in the shadow of Russia's thinly veiled nuclear threat.
This is a chilling development.
Ukraine's representative likened Putin to Hitler.
If he wants to kill himself, he doesn't need to use nuclear arsenal. He has to do what the guy in Berlin did in a bunker.
As the Ukrainian flag was hoisted outside the European Parliament, Volodymyr Zelensky wanted something more than symbolism, signing a formal application for Ukraine to become a member of the EU immediately. In response, Germany's foreign minister said Ukraine is part of the House of Europe. In London, Brett McLeod, 9 News.
Сили сьогодні жорстоко обстріляли Харків з реактивної артилерії. Це однозначно воєнний злочин. Мирне місто, мирні житлові райони, жодного військового об'єкту. Десятки записів очевидців доводять, що це не окремий помилковий залп, а свідоме знищення людей. Росіяни знали, куди стріляють. За цей злочин точно буде трибунал. Міжнародний. Це порушення усіх конвенцій. Ніхто у світі не пробачить вам вбивство мирних українських людей. Сьогодні за ініціативою російської сторони відбувся перший раунд переговорів між Україною і Росією. Ці переговори відбувалися на фоні бомбардування та обстрілів нашої території, обстрілів наших міст. Було видно синхронізацію обстрілів з переговорним процесом. Я вважаю, що таким нехитрим способом Росія намагається тиснути. Не втрачайте час. Тактику таку ми не сприймаємо. Справедливі переговори можуть бути тоді, коли одна сторона не б'є по іншій стороні реактивною артилерією, саме у момент переговорів. Ще одна річ, про яку дуже важливо сказати. Ми чекали цього 30 років. Сьогодні я підписав заявку на членство України в Європейському Союзі. Ми вибороли своє право бути разом з усіма в Європі, на рівних. Заявка вже доставлена в Брюссель. Офіційно зареєстровано. Час настав. Слава Україні!
Украинская и российская делегация провели сегодня первый раунд переговоров, основной целью которых было обсуждение вопросов прекращения огня на территории Украины и боевых действий. Стороны определили ряд приоритетных тем, по которым наметились определенные решения. Ради того, чтобы эти решения получили какие-то возможности имплементации в логистические решения, стороны уезжают для консультаций в столицы свои, и стороны обсудили возможность в ближайшее время проведения второго раунда переговоров, на которых эти темы получат уже конкретную практику развития. Спасибо.
Только что закончились переговоры с украинской стороной, которые длились примерно около 5 часов. За это время мы подробно прошли по всем пунктам повестки, нашли некоторые точки, по которым можно прогнозировать общие позиции. И самое главное, договорились продолжить переговорный процесс. Следующая встреча состоится в ближайшие дни на польско-белорусской границе. Есть соответствующие договоренности. До того времени каждая из делегаций, руководство каждой из делегаций проконсультируется по всем переговорным позициям с руководством страны.
Белорусская сторона не уходит от ответственности, как пытаются говорить некоторые источники. Мы готовы внести свой вклад в разрешение кризиса. Эта встреча нужна была для того, чтобы продолжить контакты, которые, возможно, помогут нам разрешить все те кризисные вопросы, которые существуют в настоящий момент.